I'll just forward.
For those that are watching the live stream, we will come to order in just a minute or two. We're just waiting to have one board member who's on his way in from the parking lot, and then also make sure we've got one board member phoning in online as well. So we'll start momentarily.
Kevin, you want to go ahead and call the meeting?
Yes, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Thank you, Wendy. My name is Kevin Monroe, and I serve as the current chairperson of the Tennessee Board of Accountancy. Today is Tuesday, July 27th, 2021, and I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Tennessee State Board of Accountancy. This regularly scheduled meeting is taking place in room 1A of the Davy Crockett Tower at 500 James Robertson Parkway in Nashville, Tennessee, with some members participating via WebEx, although we have a physical quorum of members that are present. A link to this meeting is available on the board's website for those who are unable to participate in person. And at this time, Karen, I'll ask you to perform a roll call to confirm a quorum.
Andy Bonner.
Here.
Janet Booker Davis.
Here.
Pamela Church.
Here.
Larry Elmore.
Here.
Greg Gilbert.
Here.
John Griesbeck.
Here.
Kevin Monroe.
Present.
Gay Moon.
Here.
Judy Weatherby.
Here.
Okay, thank you. We have a quorum. So we will proceed to announcements. Board appointments by the governor are still pending, so those with expired terms on the board will continue to serve until new appointments have been confirmed. Because we have a quorum, a physical quorum in person, roll call votes will not be necessary. I would just remind board members and speakers in the room to use the microphone and make sure that the little red band on their microphone is lit when they are speaking, so that not only can we hear it in the physical meeting room, but also those that are watching online or listening on the phone or participating via WebEx can hear it as well. This meeting is open to the public, and it will also be available for replay in a day or two. We welcome our visitors to the meeting, and also those that are viewing the WebEx exchange. And there will be an opportunity for participation for those that are involved in various informal hearings that we will have today, and we have two scheduled, but also at the conclusion of the meeting for any comments when we have new and old business. With that, we'll go ahead and proceed to our first action item, which is to review and adopt the agenda for today's meeting. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
I so move.
Thank you, Greg. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. And is there any further discussion with respect to that? All those in favor of adopting the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any,
Aye.
thank you. Any opposed, say nay. Okay, the motion carries and the agenda is adopted. The next item is the approval of the meeting minutes from our May 4th, 2021 regularly scheduled quarterly meeting. Those have been presented in the read-ahead materials. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I move that we approve the minutes.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by several, but I think I heard Andy first. Any further discussion with respect to comments or potential edits on the minutes from the May 4th, 2021 meeting? If not, we'll go ahead and take the vote on that motion. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. The motion carries. Our next item is the Executive Director's Report, and if I fail to remember, I know that we'll have at least one action item coming out of that with respect to approval of meeting dates for the new proposed meeting date, I believe in October 2022. So remind me if I don't catch that after the end of Wendy's riveting report here. So we're all looking forward to it, and I'll turn the floor over to you, Wendy.
Chairman, can y'all hear me? Yes. Okay. I don't know about riveting, but we'll go through it, and
Okay.
y'all can ask questions if you need to. Of course, the top of the report there are future meeting dates, and as Kevin mentioned, the last one we'll need to approve at the end of my report. So there I also listed NASBA's meetings. We had some great attendance by board members at NASBA's regional meeting back in June, so I thank you all for participating. It's just such a great opportunity to hear what's going on in the profession and really learn things that we can't cover in depth in these meetings. You can learn about at the NASBA meetings. And so I think it just creates a well-educated board, and you all are able to make better decisions as a result of your participation. And so I appreciate that. And I just listed there some of the updates that we heard at the NASBA regional meeting. Of course, a post-COVID anti-regulation update, updates from the CPA exam, a report from the CPA exam review board, some discussion on accreditation changes, education research projects, which I found very interesting, CPA evolution update, ransomware issues, a peer review update, and some information from the American Accounting Association on education. So very interesting sessions that they had. NASBA's upcoming meeting is their annual meeting, which will be the very end of October, 1st of November. And I think you all have received communication on that. Vaccination will be required for attendance, and we'll talk about the number of board members that we will approve to send a little bit later in the meeting. That is going to be held in San Diego, California as of now. I think there's still that's still a little bit tentative given the pandemic and how things might transpire. So we will wait until later to make any reservations and that type of thing with the annual meeting. So a newsletter, we do a newsletter twice a year, and the most recent one was distributed on June 1st. Via email to all licensees, and is also posted to our website for your review. Outreach. Did do a couple of outreach events since our last meeting. Chairman Monroe gave an update to TSCPA's council meeting at their convention in June. And then I attended TSCPA's Appalachian chapter meeting just last week and gave an update on board activities. So I appreciate TSCPA allowing us to come along for that. CPA exam. I did attach the Board of Examiners update in the attachment 1 to the director's report. And also you all would have received an email from the AICPA about the practice analysis beginning and some information and feedback that they're looking for from practitioners. And so I encourage you to go back and look for that email. It was distributed on July 15th. It is a survey that I don't have the background to answer, but those of you in practice do. And so I encourage you to go back and I think they indicate it takes about 30 minutes to take the survey. So they're looking for what needs to be covered on the exam and your feedback as a practitioner. And so if you all would like me to forward you that email, I'm happy to do that. Or you can look back and see if you can locate that from July 15th. I believe all the board members received it, but I'm not positive. Oh, you would not have received it. Okay. Okay. The Board of Examiners update is typically, they do these updates every quarter, and it's just kind of what's going on with the exam. And some of the most concerning issues with the exam is the pipeline, and the number of folks scheduled to take the exam is down. You might expect it to have recovered a little bit from the pandemic from last year, and it has recovered a little bit, but we are not back to 2019 levels. And so there is some continued concern that we are facing some pipeline issues with regards to the number of folks sitting for the exam. And so we'll continue to look at that and things that we might be able to do as a board to encourage folks to enter the profession. And then finally, there's an attachment too, there's a candidate care report, which is basically a report we get on things that feedback the candidates give in their experience in taking the exam. And so the one item to note is there has been an issue for a number of years with multiple restarts. And I think that is down to almost zero on this candidate care report. So it sounds like they've resolved that issue. And Pam, I know, is on the computer-based testing committee, so she may be able to speak. If there's anything I'm missing there, Pam, feel free to jump in.
What did you just say? Multiple what?
The multiple restarts. So when a candidate goes in to take the exam, they sometimes have some trouble with the exam restarting, and that had been an issue, but it looks like that's been resolved.
Right. I think that has been pretty much resolved. I've got other issues about testing. Do you want me to discuss them now or wait till the NASBA committee report?
Let's do the NASBA committee report, if that's okay.
Okay.
Okay. The next item is the CPA exam, the Elijah Watt Sells Award. And so that award is issued by the AICPA each year, and it's given to CPA candidates who obtained a cumulative 95.5 across all 4 exam sections and completed their testing in 2020. Nearly 75,000 individuals sat for the exam in 2020, and 89 candidates met the criteria for the award. We had 2 individuals from Tennessee. Natasha Lambert is a graduate of Indiana University with a Bachelor of Science in Accounting and a Master's of an MBA from University of Indianapolis, and is employed with Cumberland Consulting Group in Franklin, Tennessee. And William Martins, a graduate of the University of Arkansas with a Bachelor of Science in International Business and a Master of Accountancy from the University of Arkansas, and is employed by PwC in Fayetteville, Arkansas. So although some of these education and places of employment might be outside the state, they chose Tennessee as the jurisdiction that they sat in, and those are our 2 winners from Tennessee. So congratulations to them. Just an update on the Cpe audit. We are in the middle of the audit. We randomly selected 554 individuals for the Cpe audit this year. The initial request was via email. We've also mailed letters in June to those who had not responded. The deadline is July 31st. So far, the response rate is 67% have responded to the audit, and the compliance rate is about 98%, which is similar to last year, and a much improvement after the board's change in the renewal requirements for providing that listing. And so I think we're on track there. And I'll give a more updated or final update at the October meeting on that audit. And then the next thing you'll see is just performance metrics that are tracked internally. We track licensing time, how long it takes us to issue a license from the time we receive the application to when we issue the license. You will see we are doing better than we were doing the prior year at 3.7 days in May and 5.4 days in June. Those numbers from last year, 11 days and 10 days, are really a little bit out of the norm. We are typically, I would say, around 7 days is our normal number. So, and that takes into account people who submit an application who are missing something. Maybe their education or maybe their experience isn't a full year or something like that. So we have to put it on hold until they meet the requirement or submit the requested documents. Case and complaint performance, that's just the number of cases that we're able to bring to the board for resolution within 180 days. And we are able to do that with all of our cases at this point. And the online adoption rate is simply the number of folks that apply for a license online. And so we typically are anywhere between 92 and 100% on that. And then finally, just some license counts, new licenses issued. We did have a great first quarter. We fell back a little bit in the second quarter, but we are still pretty strong for the year at 321 individual licenses issued and 40 firm permits issued in the current year. Last page is your licensing counts. As of June 2021, June 30, 11,646 active licenses versus last year we had 11,435 licensees. So about almost 200 uptick there in the number of active licensees. So that's good news. And the active firm permits is down just a tad, basically flat to the prior year. And Mr. Chairman, I believe that concludes my comments. If you have any questions?
Okay, thank you, Wendy. Are there any board member questions with respect to the executive director's report? And then we will have one action item on the meeting date approval. All right, thanks, Wendy. We'll go ahead and take a motion to approve the meeting date of Tuesday, October 25th, 2022 as the quarterly meeting date in that quarter of the year. We typically try to do those approvals well over a year in advance so that people and staff can schedule with respect to their meeting and travel schedule needs. Is there a motion to that effect?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Andy. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Thanks, Judy. Any further comment or question? If not, all in favor of the approving the date as October 25th, 2022 for that October meeting date, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. Okay, the motion passes. And Stephen, I think we heard your voice, so thank you for joining in, and appreciate everybody on WebEx joining in with us, as well as those who are in person. The next item on the agenda, we have two informal appearance items on the agenda, and the first of those two is for the initial license application for Ms. Tamika Young, who is here with us, present in the boardroom today. And what I'd like to do, if I may, is turn things over, Maria, to you or to Wendy to kind of just lay out the background, and then we'll work through what we need to work through here.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This applicant did indicate on her application that she was convicted of a felony, and so under the Accountancy Board statute, there is discretion for the board to deny those who have felony convictions. However, the legislator has adopted the Fresh Start Act, which you may all remember. We have had some of those analysis recently. In Ms. Young's case, I sent you all a memorandum outlining the factors that are enumerated in the Fresh Start Act and whether or not it is my legal recommendation that you all have the discretion to deny this applicant. And after going through the factors, I recommend that you all should move forward in approving this application. However, the final decision and vote lies with you all. It's my legal recommendation that in the event this, if you did decide to deny and it was appealed, that it would not be a defensible argument, that it is related directly to the profession due to the several factors surrounding the conviction, the age of it, and the charges and the conviction. So I know Ms. Young is here today to answer any questions that you all might have. Before we ask her to come up, do you have any questions for me as far as the memo that was prepared.
We appreciate the memo, Maria from legal, and also Tamika, we also very much appreciate the very well organized packet of information that you provided to the board. It laid out the history and facts very well as the career and progress that you have taken in your life since this well over 25-year-old action has taken place. And so we appreciate that very much. I guess, given that the board members don't have any questions of Maria from legal counsel standpoint, Tamika, it would be appropriate if you'd like to. You're welcome to address the board or respond to any questions that board members may have. Yes, please just approach the podium and just speak directly into the microphone.
Sorry. Okay, great. As you all know, I am Tamika, and I'm a person of very few words, so
That's
I do
fine.
appreciate the opportunity to present in front of you all today, for you all also to consider to give me my license. So that's really all I really wanted to say today.
That's fine. Tamika, if you could just say, are there any specific questions that board members would like to ask Ms. Young while she's at the podium?
I don't have a question, but I also would like to follow Chairman Monroe's comments about you put together a very nice package, very helpful, very thorough. And so thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Any other questions for Tamika?
I would just say, when I read through this, I was very impressed with how you really pulled yourself together and you progressed in your career. And it is actually a pleasure to have people like you come before us and make this request after having so much success and really turning things around. So,
thank you.
Thank you. If no other questions, I think the action item before the board is to approve Tamika's initial license application. That is the action item that we have before us.
so moved.
We have a motion.
Second.
And we have a second. Is there any further comment or discussion? Hearing none, we will go ahead and take the vote. All those in favor of approving Tamika Young's initial license application, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed, please signify by saying nay. Thank you. Tamika, the motion passes unanimously. In my view, what you have done here in terms of your willingness to present before the board and to seek to become a certified public accountant is impressive, and just would echo congratulations to you that several board members have already offered. And also, I just would say this to me is the epitome of why the governor and the legislature passed the Fresh Start Act. This is exactly one of the outcomes that was desired with respect to that legislation, and you have epitomized the perseverance and the skills necessary to succeed. Even the application process to join this profession and all of the prep work that it takes to get to that point are not easy, but you've done that. And we want to just be the first to welcome you into the profession and just offer congratulations.
Thank you.
You're so very welcome.
Mr. Chairman, do we want to discuss right now the possibility of setting a precedent for these moving forward?
Yes, thank you for bringing that point up, Maria. When we were establishing the agenda, and I was working with Maria from legal counsel in terms of, what are the decision points that our board needs to make in a situation like this where legal counsel believes that the Fresh Start Act applies, and we would not be as a board in a position to deny, the particular action that is being requested of us. one of the things that we reviewed was that several of the other state boards that Maria and other members of legal counsel work with handled these types of matters differently. And as an example, I believe you mentioned, Maria, that the Motor Vehicle Board basically says in a situation when the legal has determined that Fresh Start Act applies and that denial or revocation, whatever the action is not appropriate, then basically the staff of the board, in our case it would be Wendy's executive director, would have the authority to just proceed and approve that action, whatever that case may be. We don't get, as our board, we don't get a lot of these in any particular year, but we do get, at least my recollection is 1 or 2 a year since the act has become applicable. And I think it's a matter, what I wanted to do was just invite a discussion among all of the board members to see if they're comfortable with something like what Motor Vehicle Board is doing, or, as is our prerogative, we would prefer to still go ahead and have the presentation just like we had today with respect to Ms. Young. And so what we wanted to do was just maybe circle around and get input from board members as to what their preferences are in terms of how to handle future matters where at least legal and staff are recommending that the Fresh Start Act applies and the board really does not have discretion with respect to whatever action's being asked of it. So just open up the floor to board members for thoughts and comments.
I would say that I would be for having legal and staff make that decision. It's probably a pretty clear-cut case in most instances, and then the ones that they're not comfortable with, they can bring to the board. And I think it would save the expense of some of the applicants from having to drive up here. And of course, that's a burden anyway. But it would be good to do that for those that are trying to get a fresh start.
Thanks, Andy. Other comments or perspectives?
I would assume that the minimum documentation in that instance would be an analysis by legal to be included there, and obviously Wendy's or approval as executive director.
So Maria, I think my follow-up to that, just to make sure, is that you would still do the analysis and we'd include that with the application, correct?
That is correct. So in these instances, for example, with the Motor Vehicle Commission, I address the memo to the executive director and make my recommendation to her, and then she still has that on file, and the analysis is part of their record.
Other thoughts and comments? I'm not hearing any objections to allowing legal and executive director staff to go ahead and perform the necessary analysis and make the appropriate decisions. And John, what I'm getting from your comments is also just keep the board aware of those circumstances, as we go through them, so that they have awareness, but that we would not be acting on those decisions.
Correct. I think I was
board.
more coming from the standpoint of the file would include her analysis. And, I don't know that we even need to be reported to necessarily. We're not on every other applicant. So.
All right. Wendy and Maria, do y'all have enough comfort with direction here, or would you like any additional direction?
I think we need a vote, correct?
Certainly. So the vote, if I may suggest, might look something like in situations where legal has made a determination that there's not discretion to deny under the Fresh Start Act, that you all grant the executive director the authority to approve applications in those instances. Something like that.
Just that motion, but add with legal doing analysis and
yes,
giving it to executive director for documentation. I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion along those lines. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Thank you. Is there any further comment or discussion on the motion? If not, we'll go ahead and call for a vote on the motion. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Thank you. And all those opposed, please say nay. Okay, that motion passes. Thank you, Maria, for very tactfully reminding me of the notes that I should have been reading here on my own here. So that was a good policy discussion that we thought we needed to bring before the board, since these cases are going to be continuing on. The next informal item that we have does not involve an appearance yet by the party, but under our board rules, we basically have a two-step process for the reactivation of a license that's previously been inactivated or revoked. In this case, the licensee who is requesting reactivation is Robert Yergin, and the meeting today is not to discuss, or the action today is not to discuss the substantive merits of whether or not this person's license should be reinstated. It is simply a ministerial determination as to whether or not the application for reinstatement is completed and in good form for consideration of the merits, which will take place at the next regularly scheduled quarterly meeting. And so for that, I'll turn the floor over to Maria to just briefly discuss background and also legal and staff analysis as to whether the form is complete and in good order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as far as the legal perspective, this applicant for reinstatement, his license was revoked, and it was due to some charges in 1992. And he has submitted his application for reinstatement. It is a complete application at this point. There is I wouldn't say extensive, but there are several convictions that have occurred as that resulted in the revocation. And then also subsequently there were some convictions. I will be preparing a detailed memorandum for you all, and I can gather the official conviction documents so that you will have that information at the next meeting in order to be able to question the individual. And so I know it can be confusing sometimes, but this, like Kevin said, this meeting is for evaluating completeness of the application, and then I will provide you all a more detailed memo outlining the criminal history and the crimes that resulted in the revocation of the license. And because the license revocation was due to the crimes that were committed, there will be a Fresh Start Act analysis in this case, because the Fresh Start Act is for people who are trying to enter the field and rehabilitate from past crimes, but this individual held his license and committed felonies that resulted in the revocation. So that I don't want you all to be confused as to why we're not doing a Fresh Start Act for Mr. Yergin. And then I'll turn it over to Wendy just to go over the completeness of the application.
Yeah.
Thanks, Maria. In a reinstatement application, really what we require of the applicant is to complete the application, pay the $250 reinstatement fee. For a reinstatement of a revoked or suspended license, we do not require CPE up front. That will be a decision that you all can make at the next meeting. If indeed you vote to reinstate the license, you can determine at that time how much CP, if any, that you would like the individual to take. And so we don't require it on the front end. So they are also supposed to provide a petition related to why they are seeking their license, and the front page of the document is what we received from this particular applicant. And I believe, as Maria stated, we'll just go into more detail at the next meeting, but we do feel the application is complete. I guess what I'm looking for today is for you all to acknowledge that, and also it is not a requirement that the individual attend the next meeting, but I'm thinking in this situation, the board would request that this individual attend. I'm sure there's a lot of questions related to this one. So if you could make that request today, we can advise the applicant of that.
Thank you, Wendy. Appreciate that. And Maria, also appreciate your analysis with respect to the non-applicability in this case of the Fresh Start Act. So I think the action item that the board needs to take is to accept basically staff's acknowledgement that the application for reinstatement is complete, and determine whether we would request this individual to appear at our next meeting where we would actually consider the reinstatement or reactivation of his license. I guess I would ask for a motion to that effect, and then if we have a second, then we'll open it up for discussion and a vote.
Kevin, this is Janet. Did I understand you to say that the Fresh Start Act would not apply?
Yes, that's correct. And Maria, I'll turn it over to you to refresh the rationale behind that. But in this case, this is a revocation for felony violations of a license that was held by a CPA. And in essence, as I understood it, Maria, the Fresh Start Act does not apply in that situation. It's more designed to lower barriers to initial entry into the profession.
Yes, thank you, Janet. That's correct. Mr. Yergin held a license, and due to the felony federal convictions that he had, his license was revoked on that basis. And so it's not an instance where the Fresh Start Act would apply. The Fresh Start Act is applicable to, as Kevin mentioned, for initial licensure, and then also for those, if we are made aware on renewal of a conviction and it doesn't relate to the profession, then we would do an analysis. But for revocations where the license was revoked due to the crime, it doesn't apply in this instance.
Okay, thank you for that. I thought I heard you say that it would apply, and then Kevin, I said it wouldn't, so I was confused. Thanks.
You're welcome, Janet. At this point, is there a motion to accept the applicant's application for reactivation and to request his appearance at the October board meeting where the board will deliberate on whether reinstatement or his license should be reactivated?
So moved.
Thank you, Judy. Is there a second? Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, we'll go ahead and take a vote on the motion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Okay, the motion carries. And so Wendy and Maria will just seek you out to instruct the individual involved that we would request his appearance at the October meeting. Okay. Next item are board committee reports, and for those that are watching the webcast of the proceedings, typically what the board does is we meet in committee the day prior to our board meeting. That is also a public noticed meeting, and folks are welcome to attend or view via WebEx with respect to the committee meetings. And that's where a lot of the in-depth discussion around the action items that we'll be addressing today have occurred. And so we'll go ahead and work through our committee meeting agenda, and the committee chairs will be reporting out what their committee members recommended to the board for its consideration today on final action on whatever action items are needed. And we'll start with our licensing committee, which is chaired by Gay Moon. And Gay had a busy agenda yesterday, a lot of unique cases, so I'll turn it over to you for presentation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to take it in the order that we had them yesterday. The first item was Ms. Susan Farrell, who passed her exam in 1995. At the time, there was no expiration of exam scores. Later in 2014, we did have a rule. We were asked to set that aside, and after some discussion and Ms. Farrell coming to our board meeting and addressing us and also answering any questions that any of the board members have, the committee voted to recommend a 12-month extension of her exam scores, and we require an 80 hours of technical CPE coursework, including the Tennessee specific ethics. So that is our recommendation to the board.
Chairman, may I request some further discussion on one item related to that? Something I mentioned in my memo but was not discussed yesterday was an acknowledgement by the board that her education received at that time would be acceptable for licensure. So the education has changed a few times since that time. And so with the approval of the scores, that would also approve the education she received at that time. Is the board comfortable with that?
Haven't we done that for somebody else in the last couple of years? That's what
I just want to make sure that everybody's aware of that and that that's part of the documentation.
I think as we've discussed, I think Pam is better to maybe weigh in on this, but as we've discussed before, prior to the hours being increased, that coursework was in the 4-year degree and within the 120 hours. Is that right? And so during the time she was educated, I believe that she would have covered everything required for the CPA licensure at that time. Is that correct? Or
it was a 120-hour requirement at the time, and there was likely a difference in the number of counting hours also. Ms. Farrell does have a master's degree, so I have no doubt she meets the 150 hours, although I don't have the transcripts in front of me. We will need to request that she submit those for the file, but without, specifically checking off each particular accounting course, there might be a slight discrepancy there just because the requirements were different at that time. And
may I address the board, please?
Yeah, Ms. Farrell is on the phone, so yes.
I was required to take a few prerequisite courses that weren't covered in my undergraduate. I can't remember exactly what they were, but I did take them before sitting for the exam. And I can have the transcripts sent to you directly from the U of M and from Christian Brothers University.
Thank you, Ms. Farrell. We appreciate that, and Wendy will be in contact with you after the board takes action here as to any follow-up along those lines. Any other comments or questions?
This is Pam. My opinion is that if she had been told it was sufficient, if it would have been sufficient even in 2011, I think in keeping with the gist of what we're trying to do, that we should accept it, particularly given that she has both amassed an MBA and has taken other courses that she was told back then would be prerequisites. So I think to pick one point in time and say, no, she needs to bring it up to this point, I don't think that's in keeping with what we're trying to do.
I agree. Thank you, Pam. Any other comments? So do we need to make the motion to include her education or just keep it an extension of 12 months plus 80 hours of technical CPE, including the 2 hours of Tennessee specific? Do we need to include the comment about her education?
I think it's with the understanding that the education approved for her to sit for that was in place that approved her to sit for the exam would count towards licensure. So, sorry, that's a long.
What she said.
What she said. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay.
So that is the motion before the board.
Thank you. Gay, is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further comment or discussion? If not, we'll go ahead and call for a vote on the motion. All those in favor of approving the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 And any opposed, please signify by saying nay. So the motion passes, And Ms. Farrell, Wendy will be in contact with you for the appropriate follow-up on the transcripts and so forth. But also similarly would like to extend the board's congratulations to you on your perseverance. It was clear from your appearance before the board yesterday how much you value the CPA credential and how important you perceive that to be, as well as others perceive that to be in the business world. And we wish you the very best in your career progression. So thank you very much for participating in both yesterday's committee meetings and today's meetings.
Thank you. And thank you, Wendy, for coordinating all of this.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Gay, we'll turn it back over to you.
Next item on our agenda was Mr. Chase Bowling. He requested a 6-month extension to his BEC credit, which was originally passed in March of 2020, just prior to the COVID shutdown. After our discussion, the committee voted to recommend to the board that we do extend his BEC credit for 6 months. And I guess that would motion before the board.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on Mr. Bowling's application for credit extension? If not, we'll go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed, signify by saying nay. That motion carries unanimously.
Okay, the next item is Mr. Slaughter, who has requested a 12-month extension for his reg and audit exam parts as a result of the traumatic death of his father in June of 2020. We had a pretty good discussion about this, and the committee came to the conclusion that we recommend an extension of both parts until April 18th, 2023 for both reg and audit, and that is the motion before the full board.
Thank you, Gay. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Judy. Thank you. Is there any further comment or discussion on this credit extension application? If not, we'll go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor of approval of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. That motion also passes unanimously.
Right. The next item was Ms. Rainey Massey. She was involved in a critical car accident with severe head injuries, and she has requested she originally requested a 4-month extension for her reg and BEC or through April 30, 2022. Because of doctor's orders, she was just released to study and sit for the exam. Based on our discussions in the committee meeting, we agreed to recommend an extension of time until June 30, 2022, which is a little bit longer than she asked for, but given the circumstances, we felt that was reasonable. So our recommendation and the motion is an extension of time until June 30, 2022 for reg and BEC for Ms. Massey.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
We have a second. Thank you. Is there any further comment or discussion on this item? If not, we'll go ahead and proceed to vote on the motion. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed, signify by saying nay. That motion also carries unanimously.
Right. The last item on our agenda is MTSU's department chair requested approval that accounting course 3000 be accepted as a lower division accounting course for the purpose of qualifying for the CPA exam. We looked at the catalog, we had a good discussion, and the committee came to the conclusion that we would recommend this be accepted as a lower division accounting course for sitting for the CPA exam, and that is the motion before the board.
This would actually be for licensure.
Oh.
I mean, for both exam and licensure. In this particular instance, this individual is ready to be licensed. I think they've already taken the parts of the exam, but it would qualify for both.
Okay. So for sitting for the exam and getting your license.
Thank you. Okay, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
We have a second. Is there any comment or discussion? If not, we'll go ahead and call the roll on this motion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. All those opposed signify by saying nay. That motion passes unanimously.
And that is the end of our agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Gay, and also thanks to the other members of the committee. I know had some very good and healthy discussion on each of these cases, and trying to, I just very much appreciate the empathy as well as the questions that were asked to make sure that the committee and the board ultimately could feel that they're doing the right thing here in each of these cases. So appreciate that. The next committee report outs would be the Enforcement Committee, and those include our disciplinary cases as well. And for that, I'll turn it over to the chair of that committee, Andy Bonner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yesterday we met and we went through the case and complaint report, kind of covered the summary of the cases outstanding, that we had 7 cases that were outstanding under CPAs and 5 for CPA firms. We also discussed the fact that the fiscal year numbers were down a little bit as far as complaints that were filed. So we went through that. Then we went through and put together our agenda. As far as enforcement, we broke it down into 3 parts. We've got a consent agenda, a proposed discipline, and then re-representations. And so, Mr. Chairman, we will cover each and then ask for a vote on each as we go through it for the 3 different parts.
Okay.
So the first one is just we had 3 cases that had different events, from holding out as a license, fraudulent activity, but overall, there was insufficient evidence to support that, and we asked that the committee asked that those 3 cases be closed as presented in cases 1 through 3, and we make that as a motion.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Bonner, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
You have a second? Is there any further discussion with respect to the committee's recommendations on cases 1 through 3, which are to close each of those cases? We'll go ahead and take action on the motion then. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. The motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next one will break down the first 3 cases 4 through 6. And those cases are due to unlicensed activity. We continue to have people who are unlicensed who are not issuing reports, assurance services, and then they are coming to the board from referral from different agencies within Tennessee. The first one, number 4, the recommendation for it was to authorize a formal hearing with the authority to settle via consent order upon the respondent's payment of civil penalty in the amount of $2,250. $1,500 of that is for 2 counts of issuing a test report, and then $750 is for 1 count of issuing a test report and a 2020 for the 2020 audit. And then also send a letter of instruction regarding failure to inform the board of an address change within 30 days of the change of the violation. The next one is case number 5. As we talked about, it's still an unlicensed activity. The recommendation here is to authorize a formal hearing with authority to settle via consent order upon the respondent's payment of civil penalty of an amount of $1,500 for 2 counts of issuing and a test report without an activity firm permit in violation of TCA, which is and require respondent to complete a peer review by February 28th, 2022. And the next one is number 6, and the recommendation there is to authorize a formal hearing with the authority to settle via consent order upon respondent's payment of a civil penalty an amount of $2,000 for following violations. $1,000 for issuing a test report without enrollment in an approved peer review program, and also $1,000 for providing false information on renewal application in violation of 62-1-11A1. And also require respondent to provide an exemption form agreeing to complete no additional test work or provide proof of enrollment in peer review and the completion of the peer review by February 28, 2022. Next one is case number 7. Case number 7 was acts discreditable acting through others. Respondent distributed confidential information of former employer discredit company, and then the respondent approached 2 coworkers to access confidential company information without a business need to know. This one right here, we actually amended the recommendation in our committee. The recommendation that we're bringing before you is to authorize a formal hearing with the authority to set via consent order granting respondent 30 days to return all confidential records of the complainant, subject to approval and satisfaction of the board's executive director. Require respondent to sign an affidavit prepared by the board attorney attesting to the fact that all records have been returned to the complainant. As part of the consent order provision for automatic suspension of the respondent's license in the event that she does not comply with the return of the records within 30 days. And until such time as returned, require respondent to pay a civil penalty in the amount of $4,500 for the following violations: $3,500 for 7 counts of violating TCA 62-1-116 and Board Rule 20-03-.12, acts discreditable. Also $1,000 for 2 counts of violating Board Rule 20-3-.13, acting through others, and require respondent to complete the 3-part NASPA ethics course within 30 days. Is an alternative to paying the $4,500 civil penalty and completion of the 3-part NASPA ethics course, respondent may agree to voluntarily close her license. Send a letter of instruction regarding the violation of Board Rule 20-5.03 for use of the CPA designation without an inactive qualifier. And then number 8 is failure to comply with CPE requirements.
Chairman, could I ask a question about number 7?
Yes, sir.
Is that appropriate? It's really for Maria. In light of Judy's comments yesterday about the copies, would it be appropriate in that document that's where she's going to attest to return the documents, would it be appropriate to say to return the records, including any copies thereof? I mean, is that?
Sure, and I can detail that in the affidavit that I'll prepare. And
otherwise, she could return documents, but not all the copies.
Certainly, I put in the new recommendation that the respondent will attest to the fact that all records have been returned to the complainant. So I'm happy to detail that further in the affidavit, and make sure that's clear.
Copies. Otherwise, we'll never really know whether we get them all or not.
Certainly.
It's worth trying.
Okay.
Change that one to include all documents and have her add that to it.
Copies.
Including copies. All right. Then number 8 is physical dishonesty, evasion of state use tax. The actual, it was a referral from the Tennessee Department of Revenue, and where they understated the value of a boat for sales tax purposes, grossly understated it from $146,000 to $15,000. The recommendation is to suspend respondent's license and firm permit through December 31st, 2022, and require respondent to appear before the board if reinstatement is pursued. Require respondent to pay $2,000 civil penalty in violation of Board Rule 20-04-.032B and Board Rule 20-04-.032E, and require the respondent to complete the 3-part NASPA ethics course prior to December 31st, 2022. And that would be the 5 proposed disciplines, and I make that as a motion from the committee as amended by Larry.
Thank you. Andy, is there a second on that motion?
Second.
We have a second. Is there any comment or discussion? This is with respect to cases 4 through 8 and the recommended disciplinary actions. If not, we'll go ahead and vote on the motion. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed, please signify by saying nay. That motion passes.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now we got to come down to case number 9. These are the re-representations. This case is a revocation of license. The new information is the case was heard on April 19, 2021. The respondent pleaded guilty of theft of property between $60,000 and $250,000 of felony. The respondent is sentenced to 10 years with a period of incarceration of 9 months. The remainder of the sentence will be completed on supervised probation. One of the conditions of supervised probation is that the respondent will work at a lawful occupation and support her dependents, if any, to the best of her ability. Respondent is currently incarcerated and never responded to inquiries by the board regarding the complaint. The new recommendation would be to authorize a formal hearing with authority to settle via consent order for voluntary revocation in violation of TCA 62-111A8. Case number 10 is a request to close for unlicensed activity. The new information is legal has not been able to contact the respondent. Additionally, the complainant is no longer responsive to legal counsel without the cooperation of the complainant. The board attorney will not be able to take this matter to hearing successfully. The new recommendation is to close and flag. And the last one we have today is an SEC sanction. Respondent, the new information here. This is a really long case. The respondent voluntarily closed license in December of 2020 and is currently licensed attorney in Washington, D.C. Is no longer intent of practicing as a CPA in the future and has agreed to appear before the board if chooses to reinstate license, and the recommendation here is to close and flag. And Mr. Chairman, we present these 3 representations from the committee as a motion for approval.
Thank you, Andy. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion with respect to cases 9 through 11 and the committee's recommended actions? We'll go ahead and take a vote with respect to that motion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. The motion passes.
And that's all we have from enforcement, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andy. We'll go ahead to our next committee report, which is Law and Rules, and we have a proposed rule that is under consideration, and I'll turn that over to that committee's chairman, Larry Elmore. Larry?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Laws and Rules Committee reviewed yesterday in committee session a draft rule change related to Chapter 0020-02 under the Education and Experience Requirements. This proposed change was reviewed in May. The committee had sent it back to legal for some updates and changes that were recommended by the committee and actually by the full board. And those changes were reviewed yesterday. The committee is now satisfied with the changes and the reviewed document from yesterday. And we'd like to recommend to the full board for approval, and then subsequent to that, legal would begin the rulemaking change process. Change to the rule says.
Yes, that is correct. And just one other point that you all grant me the authority to set this for rulemaking hearing, ideally at the next meeting, but sometimes just out of my hands as to how quickly I can get that approved.
Yes, we would recommend that too. So our recommendation to the board is that.
Thank you, Larry. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion or comment? I just note, as we indicated yesterday, appreciate, Wendy, y'all going out of your way to solicit input from many of the affected parties here, and we actually received some input from some of the accounting programs that made the proposed rule a better and more effective rule, hopefully, if and when it's finally enacted. So appreciate that extra effort and the comments from those in the academic institutions that chose to respond. Is there any further comment or discussion? We will go ahead and call the motion. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. The motion passes. Larry, any further report outs from your committee?
That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. We will go ahead and proceed with the executive committee, and what we discussed yesterday in the committee meeting were the year-to-date financial reports. The fiscal year, I believe, will end on June 30, and the board was presented with information concerning revenues and expenses of the Board of Accountancy through the end of the month of May. So we're getting close to the end of the year, and we had a chance to also ask questions of Wendy. That's not really an action item, but primarily an information item. There was one action item, though, that did result out of the executive committee's recommendation that will need board action, and that was to authorize up to 5 board members to attend, along with Wendy as the executive director, to attend the NASBA annual meeting should it take place as planned in end of October and November. And so that was the recommendation from the executive committee. I would put that in the form of a motion, and is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Is there any further comment or discussion? If not, we'll go ahead and act on the motion. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Thank you. Any opposed, please signify by saying nay. So that motion passes. We're running along at a good clip, but we've been in business here for almost an hour and 45 minutes. I would suggest that we take a 10-minute break if we can, and I'm showing 9:40 Central Time. So why don't we plan on reconvening at 9:50 Central Time here in 10 minutes, and then we'll complete the rest of our agenda. Morning's meeting from our brief recess. We've gotten through the board committee reports, and the next item on our agenda are the NASBA updates, and we'll start with Andy Bonner, who is who's a member of our board, but also a Southeast regional member of the NASBA board. And so, Andy, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had a great meeting last week. NASBA met for the first time ever in Nashville, Tennessee, at their corporate headquarters here. We got together Wednesday, then we had meetings on Thursday and a board meeting on Friday. The facilities over there are fantastic. If you've never been over to see the facilities, please do. And they're just outstanding. It's the first time that board had gotten together to meet since January of 2020 due to COVID. When we got together, we talked about the 2020 annual meeting and also the 2021 regional meetings. And with virtual meetings, we had more participation than ever before. And we showed record numbers. And from those record numbers, we actually got a lot more individuals applying to be on committees and participate in NASBA. And it was just an excellent report in that area. we got an update on COVID. The NASBA staff is starting to travel now. I think that they're waiting till September, or it may be late August or September, and then they're going to allow committees to come back and meet in person. On the website right now is a new announcement from Metric on the new protocols that will happen on August the 2nd. There's certain things that they're going to start reducing or releasing since COVID. The main one will be September the 1st, in the fact that they will now allow candidates to sit for the exam without mask, and I think that was a big complaint that a lot of the candidates had. From there, they kind of went through and broke down probably the 5 top initiatives that they're looking at right now. The first one's evolution with the model curriculum, the CPA exam, and the transition policy. The second one is the pipeline challenges. The third one is still the COVID impact and the changes that may come about from not only the structure of how our employees at NASBA work or where they work, but also how the exam may come forward and the testing of that. And then the fourth one is expenses for the CPA exam. It's Gateway 3.0. They plan on spending over the next 3 years $13.2 million in technology upgrades and software upgrades, not only on the CPA exam, but also in all the other interfaces that they have with softwares. And then the fifth one is experience. What kind of experience does it take to become a CPA? And they're continuing to look at that with several different comments. When you talk about the evolution, I think most everybody got got an invitation for the launch in June with the CPA evolution model curriculum. They're getting a lot of great feedback on that, and we're being told, I just looked at my phone to see if I gotten an email that there's going to be an announcement coming out the next week or so of that that will be coming out that will be important. So watch your email in that area. The exam survey was released, and they've been thinking about what will be in each section of the exam. The CPA exam blueprint is to be exposed for public comment mid-next year with the new exam on January 1st, 2024. The CPA examination transition policy, I thought it was a draft, but technically speaking, it was shared on 6/18/21. They've gotten a lot of great comments about it, and now it's become the transition policy. It had said in the email that it would not be that until the end of July, but I guess they got so many positive comments about it that it transitioned over pretty quick to where it is final. So if you got that in the email, there are no changes to that. The pipeline, NASBA and the AICPA are working together to look at trending topics related to that. There's a lot of discussion and a lot of talk among CPAs across the nation of the issues and challenges, and so you're supposed to hear that really ramp up. In fact, the AICPA has actually appointed one of their senior vice presidents to head up that committee and to run it, and so NASBA is working with them to get that done. Other than that, Mr. Chairman, I think that pretty much covers everything that we went through as a quick review.
Okay. Thank you, Andy, and also particularly thank you for your service as the Southeast Regional Director and coordinating both the virtual and telephonic meetings that we've had, not to mention all of the work with NASBA itself, and that's just greatly appreciated. Wendy?
I'd like to also recognize Andy for his service on NASBA's board, and also to let everybody know that Larry has been nominated to take over that spot as the Southeast Regional Director. I expect a formal notification here in the coming week, so we haven't seen that in writing yet. And again, it's a nomination, and that will be voted on at the annual meeting in October, November. And but congratulations to you, Larry, and excited to continue to have representation from Tennessee.
Big shoes to fill, so I'm going to do the best I can.
We've been blessed not only with Andy's current service, hopefully Larry's future service, but also preceding Andy was Casey's service as our Southeast rep. So that's something that the Tennessee board's really been active and involved with, and it's just a credit to those individuals, but also to the support of the board and the Tennessee staff as well. So thank you.
And with all the things Andy talked about, and it's an exciting time in our professional world right now with a lot of things going on. I can't ever remember a time with so many different things that are positive. Hopefully.
Yeah, we are too. We'll now go to our NASBA committee reports, and kind of as I think one of the reasons why the Tennessee board is thought of well within NASBA is that we have a number of our members who participate in committee structures as well, and so with respect to that, I'll just go around the horn of the members that I have, and if I miss someone, just pipe up. But I think I've got everybody. I know, Judy, you're serving on the Audit Committee, and I think your heavy lifting period is coming up in August, September. Is that right?
It is. Okay. I think the field work is going on currently, and we'll be having a lot to review in the next few weeks, actually, next several weeks. So
thank you in advance for that. Pam has served on our CBT, on NASBA CBT committee, and Pam, I think you mentioned you had some updates with respect to that, and this would be, the floor is yours.
Yes, I do. First of all, I was also on the transition task force, and as Andy mentioned, that transition policy has been adopted so that if a candidate has taken and passed BEC before the start of the CPA evolution, then it will count as one of the disciplines. And there was a lot of disagreement about that, and a lot of people favored another policy that actually could have had people losing parts. So I'm very pleased with this one, and let's hope it works. The difficulty is going to be getting a fairly even split on the other disciplines so that grading can be done because you have to have valid statistics. So that is a very complex situation, and I think some of the people who opposed that, it wasn't that they were wanting students to lose parts. They just didn't know if it could be accomplished logistically. But on the CBT, computer-based testing, one of the big things we did, it may not sound big, but candidates will like it, I think, is that candidates will now be able to choose between pencil and paper or the whiteboard, noteboard type of scratch paper. I know we have had situations come up with this, and they will be able to choose as they go in. They could always petition NASBA, and Patricia Hartman had said they dealt with a lot of these cases. It was very time-consuming, and she really favored just letting them choose when they go in. So I think that will be favorable. We also discussed, and this is preliminary, whether states might actually coordinate the timing of the 18-month retention period so that it would start not when a candidate has passed a part or at the end of that testing window, but rather when they receive the grades. And that would take away some of the petitions for extensions if grading is delayed, which certainly could happen with COVID or with the CPA evolution. So ours, Wendy can tell us more about that, but ours would require a rule change. The second thing we've dealt with is remote proctoring. They are moving. I don't think it's official, but about to move toward allowing a remote proctor in emergency situations only to replace one of the two Prometric proctor. So let's say one prometric proctor gets called away in emergency. You don't want those people who are testing to have to stop. And so this way, a remote proctor could log in and service the second proctor for that situation. There would be rules so that it would not be abused, so that Prometric would be aware of the conditions. And finally, as you know, remote testing in general, that consideration has been under, that format has been under consideration for quite a while, and there actually will be a pilot in each state that will count for those people who participate. And so they're moving forward with that. Still, there's a lot of sentiment that this should only be done for emergencies. I actually thought about the case that we had with someone who has had, a severe situation, whether medical or PTSD or whatever. I don't know if it would be used for that. Right now, it's being considered only for emergencies in a region or in the country. So that's what I know.
Thank you, Pam, very much. Any questions or comments for Pam with respect to the reports on transition and computer-based testing? Thank you again, Pam. And Larry, I think you are serving on the UAA committee. Any updates with respect to that committee's activities?
Well, that committee did so much about a year and a half ago related to the model rules and recommendations on those types of things. There's really not been any further meetings since that point, but we're told to be on continual call for a potential meeting at any point. So far we haven't had any meetings.
Okay. Thank you, Larry. And then Greg, I think we've got you serving on the ethics committee. Any updates from that committee's standpoint?
No formal meetings since this board's last meeting, but lots of email correspondence on some of the proposed FASBs and implementation and so forth.
Okay. Thank you, Greg. And then Janet is serving on NASBA's nominating committee. And Janet, any comments from your perspective on that committee's activities?
Well, yeah, relative to the nominating committee, congratulations, Larry, for being selected as the nominee for the Southeast region. I'll echo that, which Wendy mentioned before. We did work to select nominees for the vice chair for NASBA, and of course the vice chair will, if selected, will go on to become the chair of NASBA for 2022 and 2023. So we completed that work to get the vice chair nominee selected. We also selected 7 other regional director nominees for the Pacific, Mountain, Southwest, Central, Great Lakes, Middle Atlantic, and Northeast region, in addition to the Southeast region, and also had 3 directors at large nominees selected, and all of those will be put in place for the regional meeting if those nominees go through, which is expected to happen. And I also served on the CPA NASBA examination review board, and I served on that board for the past 3 years, and so my commitment is up on that board, and we had the final reporting for 2020 year that was under review at the last regional meeting. So with that work and reporting out, my service on that board has concluded.
Hey, thank you.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Janet. And I know that the nominating committee had a lot of heavy lifting to do. Judy, did you have a comment or a question?
I did have a question. Who was nominated for vice chair?
Let's see, what is his name? Richard Resig, Reisig. Yeah.
Okay, thank
I
you.
think there was a report on that in the NASBA State Board report that was sent out in the spring.
Okay,
But yeah, that's who the vice chair nominee is.
thanks, Janet.
Sure.
Any other NASBA committee report outs that I may have missed or overlooked?
Mr. Chairman, I serve on the Peer Review Compliance Committee, and we have met a few times. I'm kind of on a subcommittee where we're looking to redo the resources for state boards when it comes to peer review oversight. And so my counterpart, Vicki Winfeld in Nevada, and I, and a couple others are working on redoing content for state boards to help educate them on procs, peer review oversight committees, and education and resources. So we hope to have that up and going in the next few months or so, and then hopefully have a WebEx meeting with other directors so we can kind of lay that information out for them for their use.
Thank you, Wendy. I think that then concludes the NASBA update section of the agenda, and so now we're into the old and new business sections of the agenda. And July is typically the meeting when we have our officer elections from among the members of the board, and there are the positions of chairperson, vice chairperson, and secretary. And what I would propose that we do, if the board is amenable to this, is that we start with the chairperson position, allow for nominations and then discussions and then a vote on that position, and then proceed to the vice chair position and then proceed to the secretary position. Are board members comfortable with that kind of a process and order? Okay. At this time, then I would open the floor for nominations for chairperson of the board for the upcoming year, essentially through our next July meeting. Thank you.
I would second that. It's necessary.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Are there any other nominations that anyone would like to make?
I'm sorry, this is Pam. We couldn't hear that.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
that's
I
what
think I forgot to press my take my mute off. I nominated Kevin Monroe, and Gay seconded that nomination.
So now the floor is open for any further nominations that anyone would like to make.
Mr. Chairman, this is more of an item of discussion and not a nomination, but I think you have served us extremely well. And talking about someone that really understands Robert's Rules of Orders and knows how to conduct a meeting, and you've represented us well at NASBA meetings. And I know I've been at the TSCPA Council meetings, and you've presented and have represented us outstanding. And I think you earn an A+ for your efforts. I'm thinking down the road, maybe a year from now, that the board consider Andy. And again, it's not a nomination at this point. And in part, Andy is certainly a wonderful leader and has represented us well with NASBA. And I think he's expressed an interest in continuing to serve NASBA. And I think that possibly he would have the option at some point to be chair-elect. But as I understand the history of NASBA, in order to be vice chair of NASBA and then move to the chair position, you essentially have to have completed at least a year of service as chair of your state board of accountancy. And so for that reason, I think looking forward to the future, if Andy is still interested in serving NASBA at that point in time, it'd certainly be great to have a Tennessee representative serving that position. So zero reflection on you. You've done an excellent job. I'm just thinking down the road that might be a consideration for the board.
I sure appreciate that, Reagan, and I wholeheartedly agree. Any other comments or nominations before we close nominations and proceed?
Make a motion to close nominations.
Thanks, Andy. The nominations are closed, and we have only one nominee at this time. I think that choice is made by acclamation, essentially. And so we will go ahead and proceed to open the floor for nominations for the vice chair position.
I would nominate Andy to continue as vice chair of our board.
Second that nomination.
We have a motion by Gay and a second by Judy to nominate Andy as vice chair. Are there any other nominations that any board members would like to make for the vice chair position? Hearing none, I'll declare the nominations closed. And by acclamation, Andy, you will continue to serve as vice chair, and thank you very much for the work that you have done and will continue to do. We now have the third and final officer position is the position of secretary of the board. And before I just request nominations here, just want to, I think some folks don't necessarily know what all is involved with that, but among other things, it involves careful and close review of the minutes and also generally watching the replays of the videos of the meetings so that one can make sure that the written minutes accurately reflect the proceedings in the meetings. And so, Larry, you've done that this past year. I know, Gay, in my tenure, you've done that for several years preceding that. And so thank you both for those activities. At this point, I'll open up the floor for nominations for secretary.
I will nominate Larry to continue as secretary.
We have a motion by Gay and a second by Andy for Larry's continuing in the position of secretary. Are there any other additional nominations that any board members would like to make for the position of secretary? Hearing none, I'll declare the nominations closed, and Larry will resume the position of secretary by acclamation if he's willing.
I would like to say that those tapes, the second time through on the meeting is not a bit better than the first time. So it's an interesting position. Now, Wendy and Karen may not want me to serve again.
I think you and Gay have done a superb job at just making sure that the minutes are reflective of the actions taken, and I really truly appreciate both of your time in doing that.
Well, y'all do a great job on the draft that you send to us, and but it's an interesting job.
Thank you. That concludes the election of officers. Typically, the way that we've handled formations of committees is that we've asked board members to express preferences for which committees they would like to serve on to Wendy. And also, if you have a penchant for serving as a chair of any of the committees, I think the executive committee by definition is comprised of the officers of the board that have just been elected. But each of the other committees, if you have a preference to serve or on the committee or to serve as chair, if you would please communicate that to Wendy, and then we'll formulate recommendations and then act on those appointments at our next regularly scheduled October meeting. Finally, I mentioned at the outset that there would be an opportunity for participation. So if there are those that are calling into the meeting and have any public input or comment that they would like to make at this time or are present in the meeting room to do the same, this is their opportunity to do so.
There was a gentleman that came in. I don't know where. I think his phone rang and he went out, but I don't know if he was here to. Did you know who that?
I didn't see.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Because my back's turned, I guess I just didn't notice.
Okay.
Talking about Cpe Evolution, and he kind of started looking at his phone like maybe he was in the wrong room.
Yeah.
The contractors are meeting next door, so that could be.
Maybe we can run over there and storm the meeting and try to get some action on performing checks up front before unlicensed CPAs or unpeer-reviewed CPAs are issuing their review reports. Greg, echoing your comments, it's been a pleasure to serve, and I wholeheartedly endorse kind of the suggested path. If the board at that time is willing, I'm looking forward to that. And very much have appreciated the opportunity to serve as chair for this year, but most especially want to thank all of our members and each and every member of the staff to roll through what we have with COVID, and this being our first in-person meeting in roughly 18 months or thereabouts, and to kind of keep things running for our current professionals and our aspiring professionals takes some work and some organizational thought. And I think all of us who get a chance to participate in our Southeast regional meetings or NASBA annual meetings, we get a feel for how the troubles as well as the trials of other boards of accountancy, either conflicted by budget constraints or staffing constraints or whatever the case may be. And fortunately, through the wisdom of our executive branch and the leadership of the Commerce and Insurance Department and the legislature, we have what we need to do our job and both protect our licensees and protect the public. And so just want to say a thank you to each of the board members who continue to serve and who have served, and also thank you to the staff who have worked hard to prep for each meeting and make sure that we're doing what we need to be doing appropriately. So with that, if there is no further business, we'll declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you.